middle, it says 02 overview. There's arrows on either side.
Oh, great. So today, and in this module, we'll cover several topics. We'll see how they're changing the way complex work gets done, both in business and in our communities. Specifically at those 4 different types of networks that I already mentioned, those are important economic development, and then discuss some very practical ways to start and grow networks to support economic development strategies. Start out this one with a little discussion on that'll help people understand how networks can be and what they are. So, most of us are more worked than we probably usually realize, and sometimes this becomes evident in what we call small world story. And those are occasions when you discover some connection with a complete stranger, or maybe when you run into your next door neighbor while on vacation 1,000 miles away from home. And here I'm suggesting that you participants, if they have any small world stories that they'd like to share, take time for just a couple of those to share them. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Michael, can you give me your email address? I don't have it.
Sure can. We'll do that when I get back. I actually went to a coffee shop to try and connect to the internet, but theirs isn't working too. So there's an accident, so that they knocked down the line or something.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Scott.
That's okay. So the exercise you can go to kind of get people thinking in the direction of networks. Advancing on, with people and products and information constantly crisscrossing the globe, we often find ourselves more connected than ever before, and those connections are likely to be local, also regional, even global. And where to these connections and develop new ones, new value can emerge. And each of us has a collection of these connections, and we often refer to it as our network. Now, your own personal or professional network, you can probably think of ways in which that added value to your own life. Maybe you've leveraged your network the last time you were looking for a new job, or maybe you were trying to solve a problem or make a decision and someone in your network pointed you toward the information that you needed. Facebook status update helped you sell your sofa. That's certainly been early in my life. Or family in your community was facing difficult times, and your network helped people get organized and come to that family's aid. Suggesting that you do another quick exercise by pairing people up and pairing in their pairs with one another. They have benefited from leveraging their own personal or professional network, and then come back together in 2 or 3 minutes after they have that conversation. Now, not only have value to us as individuals, but they play an increasingly critical role in how our economy value and generates wealth. Some of the most vibrant business models in the last couple of decades have been networked business models, and networks have changed even some of the oldest industries. So take a look at the movie industry, for instance. Warner Brothers, company that we've all heard of and we've all seen their movies, around for more than a century. But the way a company makes movies has changed dramatically. Sure. In 1928, back when they were first making movies, a movie called Noah's Ark. And more than 60 people were involved in the making of the film. But all of those 60 people, every one of them, from the cast to the crew, they're Warner Brothers employees. Fast forward 90 years, and you've got a blockbuster in 11 like the last Harry Potter movie. It involves more than 750 people working on like that, but very few of them actually work for Warner Brothers. Most are independent contractors or employees of small businesses with very specific responsibilities. One company just specializes in during movie sets, and another specializes in special effects and sound editing and that sort of thing. So the point here to make is that complex movies really couldn't get made using the same organizational models that were in place in 1928. What does that, what does it mean? For a long time, the work got done in very tight hierarchies, whether you're talking about a movie studio or whether you're talking about a community. With a few on top who did most of the thinking and all the people at the bottom who did all the doing. But today, the dominant organizational model is more flat and integrated than traditional org chart. The network, it really only has two components. It has assets and linkages. Assets could be individuals, businesses, or some other sort of organization, or tangible items like computers, buildings, vehicles, or other objects. And those linkages are simply the things that connect those assets. They can be relationships between people and organizations. They can be monetary transactions or other types of transaction, or they can be flow data, goods, services, that sort of thing. Add value through the ability to accomplish or create something that no single asset in the network could accomplish or create on its own. So this notion that two or more things can create something of value is not a new idea. Somebody learned long ago, for instance, that you could take two of the Earth's most basic elements, like iron and carbon, and create steel with it. So you build a network of the right assets, and you can make a blockbuster. You can game-changing electronic device, or you can grow a regional economy. So we understand the basics of networks. The next section of this module explores the four different types of networks that sometimes can play a role in economic development strategies. And these networks include industry networks, occupational networks, entrepreneurship networks, and civic networks. And some of these are going to be familiar to you from other modules. So when it comes to an industry or an occupational network, you might be more familiar with them as industry networks and industry clusters and occupational clusters. And precept modules, you took a look at your regions. We take a look at the region's industry clusters, and we like to pay close attention to those that have the highest concentration in the regions. And that means, as you may remember, the region has a higher concentration of these industries than the rest of the United States does. So knowing that you have a high concentration of a particular group of industries is just the first step in developing an industry network or an industry cluster. And we call that the articulation phase, where you're doing the research and you're uncovering the data that says, yeah, we've got a cluster or we have a network. But, the real work of actually creating that network or that cluster occurs in these next three phases. The second phase is activation. And activation occurs when you bring together those representatives from the key businesses in the cluster, getting to know one another and to begin the process of exploring what they may be able to do together. And this process is typically facilitated by an economic organization. And there are lots of successful examples of industry network organizations around the country. You may want to stop and ask participants if they're within in their communities or their states. In Indiana, for instance, we have Bio Crossroads. It's a network organization of firms involved in the bioscience field. Acceleration is kind of the next phase in network development in industry network or industry cluster. That means when that group of firms and the supporting organizations actually start to do something. They start to do something that accelerates their growth. They band together to do bulk purchasing of raw materials that they all share, or join together to in some sort of joint marketing effort, or they partner with the local community college or the local university to develop new training programs that will meet the needs of many of them. And that's when you start to see some acceleration occur, when the networks of firms start to do something together that they've not been able to do or they couldn't do in and of themselves. Last this network building when it comes to industry clusters is the assessment. Well, you evaluate how that network is growing and create that feedback loop. Now we'll kind of switch to occupational networks, and this is where we have a case study that we're bringing in. So if you could pull up that supplemental piece that has the case study, I'll walk through that. And this is a worksheet that spells a case study about the Pleasant Valley Partnership. It's how one rural region was able to support the startup of some high-tech businesses in their community through the development of an occupational network. Using this is to divide your group into 4s and 5s. They would have one of these handouts, go through the story, and then address the questions that I'll get to in a second. I'll read this to you, but I'll try to highlight it for you. Pleasant Valley region is a made-up region. I've placed it in the Midwest, but it's a group of rural counties that have a group of coming together to think about economic development. That sounds a lot like a SET group to me. It's where they've lost lots of manufacturing jobs. Their largest employers are a couple of rural hospitals and school corporations, and just one manufacturing plant that's left in the small region. It's work looking at occupational data and found out that they had a surprising number of people in information technology or IT businesses. You don't have any IT firms, but what I realized is that they do have a mass of people doing IT work, but they're embedded in non-IT businesses. They have IT people in their hospital. They have IT people in their schools, and even the one manufacturing plant has some IT folks. So what they thought is, well, I wonder if we could get some small tech startups and get energy going in that direction if we brought together some of these IT professionals. So developed something that they call Tech Tuesday, a brag kind of deal where they invite in those professionals that are working in IT. So the story evolves into a situation where a relationship develops between two of those IT professionals. They realize that they have something in common related to youth soccer. They've both been coaches and understand, or have both expressed the need for more support and helping parents who become volunteer coaches. So with IT backgrounds, they begin to realize, well, I wonder if there's an opportunity to do some sort of app to assist with coaches. So that's exactly what happens. They moonlight and develop an app for coaches and employ some of the young people from one of the local schools who their STEM programming, and launch their app on a national platform like the App Store or the Android App Store, and they're successful. And eventually they jobs and start this company, and it started with the recognizing that they had assets embedded in their companies that they didn't even know about. So you can go ahead and shut down the worksheet, and we'll return to our PowerPoint. So the groups would go over this case study, and then they'd ask themselves these questions. How the Pleasant Valley Partnership articulate the occupational network? How do they activate the occupational network? What do they do to accelerate opportunities? and how did they assess progress. So using those steps that we just learned about articulation and active acceleration and assessment, reinforcing those parts of network development. And exercise could probably be done in about 10 minutes and then a 5-minute debriefing. So moving on. Go ahead.
Take questions as we go or at the end?
A question, maybe the easiest way is to raise hand.
Hand or put something in the chat box and I'll
we'll take questions as we go.
read it.
And then leave some hand as well. In case anyone does have any before we move on. I'll go in, but I'll try to remember to look at the Jackson for hands. Leadership networks. Those are steady places like Silicon Valley, where a great deal of entrepreneurial activities occurred. Note the reason for the success is that there's real value in having lots of entrepreneurs in close geographic proximity to one another. Having networks kind of form organically as people meet one another. And with less population density and fewer active entrepreneurs bumping into one another, it doesn't happen as easily. So that's one of the reasons why some economic development and business support groups are purposefully bringing together entrepreneurs to nurture the network development process. Because entrepreneurs kind of rub elbows with one another, they get to know one another, really, really good things can happen. Some things that can occur, we have lists here. Those include, peer learning. Most ours are, kind of by nature, lifelong learners, and they pick up new ideas and new information wherever they can, especially peers. So getting them together in peer networks is a good strategy. Another reason why it's helpful for entrepreneurs to form networks, they're usually a very generous bunch. Most have gotten where they are completely on their own. Others have helped them along the way, and they're often very quick to see how new relationships can create new opportunities. So sharing of resources happens really frequently among entrepreneurs, from from referrals for helpful support services, including patent attorneys or accountants, or even sharing office space and equipment. Other really cool things when entrepreneurs bump into one another, new ventures are explored. Some of you have been settings like this where you get some entrepreneurs together, and a lot of times you find that they're engaged in more than one venture at a time, nurturing a number of business ideas, and it's not unusual for entrepreneurs to partner together on side ventures at the same time working on their main projects. Another really important part of entrepreneurial networks is that pitfalls are avoided. Most entrepreneurs who are worth their salt have failed at one time or another, and if they haven't, they're probably not taking enough risks. But the failures, when done in close proximity to one another, can be really valuable to other entrepreneurs, teaching them what went wrong and giving them clues how to avoid those same pitfalls. And also, a network of entrepreneurs, some see that they can aggregate their needs. A network of entrepreneurs can identify common needs, quickly organize to meet those needs more efficiently or effectively, or sometimes less expensively. Several entrepreneurs, for instance, might all need the same raw material for supply, and by aggregating their needs, they may be able to get a better price. I want to take a look at another kind of case study, not as an exercise, but one that we'll kind of go through. So with several slides, you can explore AceNet, and that's an entrepreneurial network in a large region in Appalachian, Ohio, helped launch some new ventures and grow regional economies in 29 counties. As the group, as the AceNet group considers strategies for growing rural communities in this region, it noted that the three communities had several communities had a large number of small tomato farms, And initially, AceNet reached out to those farmers to see how connected they were, and what we decided to do was to do a little bit of surveying work, asking tomato farmers questions about who they work with and from whom they get advice, and they turned all that data into a computer program and then mapped the connections. This is what we discovered. When mapping those connections was they came to call kind of scattered fragments of the network. They need to work with these farmers to learn about their operations and their interest in growing their businesses. And AceNet found out that there was a good interest from many of these farmers in doing some sort of value-added effort. And, this slide kind of shows that at first we have these scattered fragments, leaving lots of room for further connections to be made. So AceNet settled on a kitchen incubator as a way not only to help these farmers add value to their tomatoes, but to serve as a hub to bring this fragmented network together. So one funding and created incubator, which was indeed used by many of these farmers, as well as some local restaurateurs. After establishing the kitchen incubator, they mapped their network again and found that the incubator had indeed become a hub for the network. Just as they hoped, new relationships be established and new enterprises emerged. Slide shows the resulting hub and spokes model for a network. And long before new activity began to emerge, where the incubator was, had never had a farmer's market, and the farmers who were using the facility saw an opportunity to form one. One of the restaurateurs then decided we would hold an outdoor cafe using fresh produce brought in by the farmers to serve breakfast and lunch on the days of the farmers market. Restaurants took notice and began purchasing more local produce to serve in their own restaurants. Then they formed an association to be more efficient in the procurement of their local products. Once AceNet mapped this evolving network and saw that it now changed forms again, and that hubs were developing around these new efforts. So we call this the multi-hub network.
Scott, what's been the benefit? More businesses, more people employed?
Businesses, you now have more restaurants using local produce, so more transactions. You've got a buzz being created about the local food culture in this particular set of communities, and it begins in this phase to bring resources into the community. So this flow of activities in this region begin to catch the attention of organizations outside the region. So they formed a coalition to try to bring in outside investment and other resources and expand their network beyond just their 29 counties.
The mapping. So who did the mapping?
Who mapping? The AceNet folks.
Okay.
This is something that they continue to look at and evaluate, and the network became larger and more complex, but it remained have a very solid but growing core that was going to reach out into the periphery. So we call this the core periphery network, and it's a typical evolution of these kinds of networks, starting with that scattered fragments, and then something occurs to create that hub, and begins connecting those fragments, and then multiple hubs begin, and then you have something that looks kind of like this. So the next slide that tells kind of the story of what occurred there. So there are more than 20,000 companies in the region, and then they're exporting their value products, and they're not big businesses. You have their businesses. You know, there's more economic activity than there was there before. With about $100,000 in annual sales among them, and they represent new jobs and new economic activity for the region. And the farmers and salsa makers are also really good about giving back to the community, providing food to the region's food pantries and that sort of thing. So, and AceNet continues to build networks and use this approach to bring together other types of entrepreneurs and really capitalize on this story that developed with the salsa folks. So, in view, the 4 phases of network development in AceNet's work include first those center fragments of network that were deliberately brought together with Hub, and then next continue to nurture that network and allowing multiple hubs to emerge, and then finally helping the network kind of solidify core and develop those boundaries of the band, and allows the economy hopefully to begin to flourish.
I have a question on the hub approach and network mapping. We issued a contract recently to do network mapping as part of our set process. And the question I would have is, you have a centralized hub, and keep in mind I can't see the presentation, but I hear what you're describing. With a centralized hub, how to deal with redundancy in case something happens to the hub, so the network can still function. If the hub goes belly up for some reason, or the center point goes away.
That's a good question, and that's why you want to move pretty quickly to that multi-hub and spokes model. If you think of any effective network, there's some redundancy there, and we've all seen examples of instances. We may have called them networks and hubs, but we've all seen examples of when that organization serving as that hub changes its needs or goes away or what have you, and then the thing falls apart. I was doing a similar talk like this with a group, and this guy he said, "This is just like Little League." That's what it means. Well, I started in another community. I started a Little League program, but I was the one holding it together, and then I moved away from that community, and it fell apart. And we got to the new community, realized that I couldn't be the only hub because I'm actually going to be out of the Little League business when my kids are grown or I choose to move again. So figuring out how to create some other hubs and create some other network builders, I think, is an important lesson as well. As part of this part of the module, what I suggest is having the group do a little bit more group work and asking them to consider work that they are a part of or have been a part of in the past, and think which of the 4 phases in, whether it was the scattered fragments phase, the single hub and spoke, multi-hub, or core and periphery, and then think about if they were involved in that network, what's some deliberate things that they could do to move to the next phase. So kind of some of what we just talked about. Allow them to do that work and then have them debrief is what I suggest. Okay. That's Civic Networks. We talked about network entrepreneurs, networks of industry and occupations, and so on to what I call Civic Networks. We use a lot of words to describe the way organizations work together, partnerships, collaborations, associations, and others. This slide depicts kind of a civic network continuum help, I think, understand the different stages of bringing organizations together over time. When groups come together, such as our set groups, for instance, one of the very first benefits is simply knowing that each other exists. We call this the acknowledgement stage of, mutual awareness. For a multi-county group, this mutual awareness a really valuable place to start. And I'm sure that many of you in your regions have asked the questions. How you have met someone new as a result of SET, and it always is the case that they are meeting someone new. To the next, please. The stage where they're starting to explore, and they start getting to know more about each other by sharing some information. They start exploring others' world and situation, and set regions. It's this is how things are going in my community, or my organization is involved in this activity, and so forth. So that's kind of the next stage in the process. And is cooperation, and this is where their organizations begin sharing resources with one another. Cooperation occurs when we start to cooperation occurs. It's beyond the information sharing, but it's starting to actually share resources. The resources can be knowledge that's exchanged, or facilities that are shared. And, we start to assess and set with different. Say, well, I'll host the next meeting, and we'll take care of lunch. They're sharing their resources, but stop there. Next we move on to the very next phase, which is and collaboration is a point where we start engaging in what I call kind of co-execution. For instance, let's say 3 counties have been thinking about or planning to host their own jobs fair in the spring. After finding that out and beginning to explore, they decide to co-execute by having one large regional job fair. So they're co-executing at this point. But then doing that, one step further, the idea of co-creation. It's a little bit different than collaborating. It's a little bit different than co-execution. Co-creation stage is when true innovation occurs. This happens when organizations get together to create something brand new, or something that no single organization could do on its own. And achieving this co-creation is necessary, I think, to implement the kinds of strategies they're talking about. A couple of other dynamics here, though, are at work. Issues, we all deal with that. You can acknowledge one another when turf issues are high. You even acknowledge your enemies. But turf issues have to be, pretty low when you start innovating, and that takes time. But the dynamic is trust. You have to have a lot of trust to do this mutual awareness thing. You have to have tons of trust in order to innovate together. You're putting yourself out there. You're sharing the risk. So I found this a way to kind of think about the evolution of these community structures of collaborating and innovating together. Part of this idea of the work that we do in networks, civic networks specifically, realization that in our old hierarchical civic structures, we have these roles like president, chairperson, secretary, treasurer. Being in civic networks, however, requires kind of a new set of leadership roles and responsibilities, and even skills. And in networks, we need to focus on leaders and develop leaders body these kinds of roles. So we need people who know how to convene. These are people that kind of maintain the civic spaces where we do civic work. and places where we can have community conversation and we can do this co-creation together. We need people who know how to be connectors, to link people and assets together in ways that add value. Like we need business entrepreneurs in the marketplace, we also need entrepreneurs in our communities. And those are the people who set new opportunities and ways to capitalize on them. We also need guides who are able to kind of map complex processes in a way so that others can understand them. We need strategists, people who can recognize patterns and figure out the ways to move forward. We also need a couple of roles that may not be as familiar to you. One of these is what I call the knowledge keeper. I was at a meeting late night last night on downtown development and brought a bunch of people in and tabletop conversations and worksheets to fill out, and they've all caught up in their conversation and not capture their thoughts on the worksheet. And these conversations are going to build on each other over time. And you have to keep stressing that you've got to capture this knowledge that is being shared. So we need to teach our new generation of civic leaders to knowledge keepers, and it's way beyond note takers. It's people who can get just conversation and size them into the key points and recognize patterns. Lastly, I think we need Web 2.0 mavens, for lack of a better term, but this is a way to keep the conversation going between our face-to-face meetings using social media and other Web 2.0 tools. Networks need this, really special skill set. In my community, we've been doing some work with cash mobs. I don't know if you all are familiar with cash mobs, but you probably have heard of a flash mob. What cash mob is a way to support local retail by organizing a place where people show up and spend $20 with that local retailer to support them. We managed to do this. There's no one in charge. There's just a group of people who got it together and dreamed up the idea, but it was very important for them to keep connected and using Web 2.0 tools to help them do that, whether it was Facebook or Twitter, Google Docs, and that other thing. So those are some of the skills I think that we need to be looking for in this new generation of network leaders. As you recall from the network diagrams that we saw in the AceNet case study with the tomato producers, the building blocks in networks is the triangle. Whether you're weaving an industry or occupational or entrepreneurship or civic network, relationship triangles is a simple but very useful tool. So this presents 7 very simple levels of network weaving, and what you'll see is closing triangles. And then I would walk people through these 7 steps. And the most basic is to suggest to A that A should talk to B. This is something we all know how to do. But when you meet Joe and you meet Mary and realize that they may have something to share with one another, well, we introduce them, or tell A that Mary that she should talk to Bob. Taking that a step further is to suggest to A that A should talk to B, and then contact B, let B know that they should expect a call from A. And I'll just go through some of these. And each one is a little bit more personal and a little bit more deliberate way to build those triangles. And very highest level is when you interest 2 people and offer specific opportunity to collaborate and get them started in a successful partnership. So those are the very simple ways where we can begin starting to weave networks. In summary, I think this module gives us an opportunity to see how network organizational structures can be used to do very complex work, both in businesses and in civic life. So I looked at some of the examples of ways networks can help grow an economy. And then we also examine some of the roles and responsibilities of network leaders, learn how each of us can close relationship triangles to begin to form networks. So hopefully some will be of benefit as our secretary move to into action. And of course, this module ends with the typical question that I ask after each module. So out there and see if anyone has any additional questions or anything to share. And of course, this is time. We've with in this particular context. So any criticisms and feedback will be appreciated as well. I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. Let me use this as a good final reflections moment. What did you find the most useful about this presentation or webinar, or what do you think will be the most useful for your SET groups?
Mike, Gus, and Nevada, I think it will be quite useful in terms of our group before this was done. We're also partnering with the governor's office and the development district on our SET project, and they decided to do the network mapping exercise. What is being done, because the team members say that there's a lot of collaboration between each other, but that's not necessarily other team members. So this is how we network. I think the network receiving part was a good thing for here. That and I would say that there's probably potential to do another network change.
Mike, unfortunately, you were breaking up. What I think I got, and I'll repeat what I understand is meeting with the governor's office on a working. Michael, there? Okay, I thought you might have dropped. With the governor's office on a networking project, and some people are what usefulness of this, and this will help.
No, what it is that some within our regional team, some entities within our regional team think that they're collaborating a great deal. There's great collaboration. Other entities, when we did a exercise on this, said that there's none. And so we need to figure out how to. People are actually being left out of collaboration. We need to figure out how to keep that as part of the process, and also as part of the process working with the office. So we're doing a network planning exercise. How can we use network together? And it'll probably be done in a month or two. And I think that the network weaving portion of this will be very useful to help build the network and collaboration that's already ongoing and keep feeling now.
That's good. He has a response. She says this builds on a group process there, and I think it'll be easy for SET participants to draw parallels to their day jobs. She uses quotes around day jobs. Did it have anything else to add? What do you is there any regions do you think they will want to do this module besides Nevada?
We'll probably do it. We'll probably do it a little differently than as it's presented. He issued a contract before we're aware of the module.
Well, no, because it could be useful. Did anyone find this confusing?
I do have us out in Colorado. Looking back on this, we're about to finish up with one of our SET modules, and one of the things they're looking at is how they develop a network to keep going with the momentum they're building with it. So this might be something we look at to kind of help them look at that process. I know they looked and explored using some local nonprofits that are already there to help them develop a network and develop a place so they can kind of house a network they were from for the set initiative.
Comments on that?
I hope that there may be some useful things there, and I would add that I do have some other resources. I mean, if you interested in some additional sources on how actually implemented the creation of some of these network structures to help organizations move forward, contact me and I'll be happy to share those with you as well.
The materials will be probably emailed out tomorrow. Rachel will be, or I'll send them out, and I'll make sure to include Scott's email address. Did comment from Valerie, well actually two. She said she did, and she said that this will fit well with module number 3 where we discussed creating a team. Does that make sense, Scott?
Yeah, I think so. I think it can.
Okay. Other comments or thoughts?
Also fits in with that asset module 2 where you're exploring your assets and talking about civics and all the different, I mean, it kind of fits into that networking of all the different assets that you have in a community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We find that it would fit into module number 4 because our group has visioning when it came to goals, goals, and they several tables actually said a goal is how to keep the duration going forward.
I think that's you. I didn't hear any of that. Unfortunately, you're too broken up.
Hey, I'll send an email.
Okay. Thoughts?
Thanks for the feedback. I hope you find some things that are useful.
Anyone else? Final thoughts? Okay. Thank you very much. This is recorded, and it will be appearing. You'll be getting notified when it's available.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.